You're seriously wearing that on camera? My sister Brooke didn't say hello when she saw me. She didn't ask how the drive from Denver had been, or whether I'd eaten. She just stood in the middle of the Mercer Ridge Lodge lobby, one hand around a clipboard, the other pointing at my left arm like she'd found a crack in the foundation. For a second, I thought she meant the dress. It was dark blue, sleeveless, simple enough for a charity gala. Then Brooke's eyes dropped to the scar running down my forearm. "Oh," I said. That. Behind her, event staff were hanging a gold banner that read 50 years of Mercer Ridge. Through the tall windows, late summer sunlight fell behind the Colorado pines. The lodge had changed since I was a kid. Same stone fireplace, same elk antlers over the bar, but now there were champagne towers, branded photo walls, and a local TV crew setting up by the ballroom. Brooke had done that. I gave her credit for it, even if she never believed I did. "Hannah, tonight is huge," she said. "The Gazette is here. Channel 8 is here. Donors are coming from Aspen. I just need one night where everything looks put together." I looked at her. "And my arm makes us look what? Poor?" Her mouth tightened. "Don't turn this into a fight." That almost made me laugh. Brooke had always been good at throwing the first punch and then acting offended when somebody refused to lie down. Our mother appeared carrying place cards. "Girls, please, not tonight." There it was, the family motto. Not tonight. Not at Thanksgiving. Not after Dad's surgery. Not when Brooke was stressed. Somehow there had never been a good night for me to say. Actually, that hurt. Mom touched my shoulder and glanced at the scar. "Honey, there's a navy blazer in the office, just for the family photos. You know how much work your sister put into this." I felt the old pressure behind my ribs, the one that used to make me give in just to make the room easier for everyone else. "I know," I said. "I'm still not covering my arm." Brooke exhaled sharply. "Of course not. Some of us stayed here and kept this place alive while you disappeared whenever life got hard. That one landed. For 6 years, my family had told people I worked medical contracts overseas. It was the closest thing to the truth I could give them. They knew I was a doctor. They knew I traveled. They knew there were months when I couldn't call. What they didn't know was why." "You don't know why I was gone," I said. Brooke folded her arms. "Exactly. Nobody does." A gravelly voice came from behind the bar. "Then maybe don't write the story for her." May Collins had worked at Mercer Ridge since before Brooke and I were born. 72, silver braid, zero patience for nonsense. She set down a tray of glasses and looked over her reading glasses. "Hannah came home," May said. "Start there." For the first time all afternoon, somebody had said exactly what I needed to hear. Brooke's face hardened, but before she could answer, Ethan walked in from the terrace. Her husband looked exactly like people expected a former Navy SEAL to look, straight-backed, controlled, expensive suit, quiet confidence. He kissed Brooke's temple, then nodded to me. "Good to see you, Hannah. Likewise." His eyes moved to my scar. Then they stopped, not on the burn, on the small black insignia beside it. Something changed in his expression. His brow tightened. His head tilted slightly, like a man hearing a song he couldn't place. Brooke was already pulling him toward the ballroom, talking about donors and camera positions. But Ethan looked back at my arm one more time. And I remember thinking, he almost recognizes it. I had no idea how much that almost was about to change. By 7:30, the ballroom was full. You could hear the kind of laughter people use when they know somebody important might be listening. Local business owners stood near the auction tables, comparing ski season numbers. A county commissioner shook hands beside the fireplace. Veterans from 3 different generations had taken over 2 tables near the back, and Brooke floated between them like she'd rehearsed every smile in the mirror. I stayed near the edge of the room with a glass of club soda. That probably sounds dramatic, but I'd learned a long time ago that crowded rooms tell you a lot about people. Who needs to be seen? Who keeps checking the exits? Who watches everyone else instead of listening? Ethan was doing that last one. Every now and then I caught him looking at my arm. Not staring exactly, studying. Then Brooke would say something to him, and he'd look away. The program started with my father thanking everyone for 50 years of Mercer Ridge. He got choked up halfway through, talking about my grandfather building the first 6 cabins by hand in 1976. Mom squeezed his shoulder. Brooke smiled for the cameras. I smiled too. Whatever else had gone wrong in our family, I loved that place. Then a man near the front dropped his wine glass. At first, nobody understood what happened. The glass hit the hardwood. He reached for the edge of his table, missed, and collapsed sideways. Somebody screamed, and the whole room changed. People stood up at once. Chairs scraped. Someone shouted, "Call 911." 3 phones appeared in the air, all pointed toward him like filming the emergency might somehow help. I was moving before I thought about it. Give him space. My voice came out sharper than it had all evening. People moved. I dropped beside him. Late 60s, maybe early 70s. Pale, sweating hard, breathing but not well. "Sir, can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered. A woman beside him grabbed my shoulder. "That's my husband. His name is Walter. He has a heart condition." "Okay. Walter, I'm Hannah. I'm a doctor." I checked his pulse and asked the woman what medications he took. She started crying. "I don't know all the names." "That's okay. You're doing fine. Look at me. Does he carry nitroglycerin?" She nodded quickly. Someone behind me said, "Should we shock him?" "No." I looked up. A young guy wearing a volunteer fire department polo was holding the lodge's AED. "Bring it here anyway. Open it. Don't apply anything until I tell you." He nodded immediately. That mattered to me. Not because he obeyed, because he listened. I asked another guest to meet EMS at the highway entrance. I told someone else to move the crowd back. Walter's breathing became more labored, but his pulse stayed present. I kept him flat, monitored him, asked short questions whenever he came around, and kept his wife focused on answering me instead of watching his face. There are moments when fear makes a room louder. For me, it does the opposite. Everything narrows. Breathing, pulse, color, time. I don't know how long we were on that floor. Maybe 6 minutes, maybe 9. Then paramedics came through the doors with equipment. The younger medic knelt beside me. "What've we got?" I gave him the handoff automatically. Age, symptoms, onset, cardiac history, medications, response, changes in level of consciousness. He looked at me for half a second longer than necessary. "Ma'am, are you flight medicine?" Something inside me tightened. I glanced toward my family. Brooke was standing near the stage, arms crossed. Ethan was beside her. "I'm a physician," I said. "That's enough for tonight." The medic gave me a look that said he knew there was more to that answer, but he didn't push. "Well, you made our job easier." They loaded Walter onto the stretcher. His wife squeezed both my hands before following them out. "Thank you," she whispered. "He was scared, and you made him feel safe." That stayed with me longer than the applause. Because, yes, people applauded. I hated it. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and tried to disappear before somebody handed me a microphone. Brooke found me near the hallway. "What was that?" I stared at her. A man collapsed. "You know what I mean." "No, actually, I don't." She lowered her voice. The live stream was running. Half the gala was just you on the floor in front of the stage. For one ridiculous second, I thought she had to be joking. Then I saw her face. She wasn't. "Brooke, he may have been having a cardiac event. And EMS was already coming. That doesn't mean everyone waits around and hopes for the best." Her jaw tightened. "You always do this." "Do what?" "Turn everything into a rescue mission." That hurt in a way she couldn't possibly understand. Because there had been nights when rescue wasn't a metaphor. Ethan walked up before I could answer. "I think she's saying the timing was rough," he said. I looked at him. A man collapsing had bad timing? His expression hardened. "You know that's not what I meant." There it was again. The assumption that I was the difficult one. I walked away before I said something I couldn't take back. In the restroom, I ran cold water over my hands. For a second, the sound of the faucet wasn't water. It was rotor wash. I smelled smoke that wasn't there. I saw orange light flashing against metal and heard somebody screaming for a medic. Then I blinked, and I was back in Colorado. Stone sink, brass faucet, soft music coming through the ceiling speakers. I looked down at the burn scar on my arm. "Not tonight," I whispered to myself. When I returned to the ballroom, Ethan was standing alone near the doors. His eyes moved from my face to the insignia beside the scar. This time he didn't look away, and something in his expression told me he was getting closer to remembering where he'd seen it before. About 20 minutes after Walter left in the ambulance, Brooke announced that we were retaking the family photo. Not asking. Announcing. The photographer had already repositioned everyone in front of the stone fireplace beneath the gold anniversary banner. My parents stood in the middle. Brooke and Ethan were on one side. I took the other. May watched from behind the bar with the expression of a woman who had already decided she disliked whatever was about to happen. Brooke stepped out of position and came toward me holding a cream-colored shawl. "Put this on." I looked at it, then at her. No. Her smile stayed frozen because the camera crew was still nearby. "Hannah, don't start. I'm standing exactly where you asked me to stand. It's one picture, and this is still my arm." Her eyes flashed. She reached forward and tried to place the shawl around my shoulders herself. I caught it before she could. "Brooke, that should have been enough." It wasn't. "For once in your life," she hissed, loud enough that several people nearby turned. "Could you stop making everyone look at that arm?" The room didn't go completely silent, but it changed. You know that sound when a restaurant gets quieter because people realize something uncomfortable is happening 2 tables over? It was like that. Mom closed her eyes. Dad whispered, "Brooke!" But nobody stepped between us. That old familiar disappointment settled into my chest, not because Brooke had said it, because once again everyone was waiting for me to be the reasonable one. Ethan moved toward us. "Okay," he said. "Enough." For half a second, I thought he meant Brooke. Then he looked at me. "Hannah, just wear the shawl. Take the picture. This doesn't need to become a whole thing." I actually laughed once, not because it was funny, because somehow, despite everything that had happened that night, I was still the problem. I didn't make it a thing. Brooke pointed at my arm. "You know exactly what you're doing." "What am I doing?" "Showing up after years away, acting like you're above everybody, refusing one simple request, taking over the room when Walter collapsed. I treated a sick man. You made sure everyone saw you do it." That was when something in me finally went still, not angry, still. There are people who mistake quiet for weakness because they have never met the kind of quiet that comes after you've decided you are done explaining yourself. I handed the shawl back to her. "Take the photo without me." I turned to leave. Brooke caught the edge of the shawl around my wrist. It snagged on the slim bracelet I was wearing. The fabric twisted, pulled, then slipped free. My arm lifted under the ballroom lights. The scar was fully exposed. So was the small black insignia beside it. Ethan stopped breathing. I noticed it immediately. 1 second he was annoyed. The next, he looked like somebody had hit him in the chest. His eyes locked on my forearm. "Wait." Brooke threw up her hands. "Oh my God, Ethan, don't encourage this. He didn't even look at her." He stepped closer. "Where did you get that?" His voice was different now. No irritation. No husband trying to keep his wife happy. Just focus. I looked at him carefully. "You know what it is?" I asked where you got it. A few veterans near the back had started paying attention. Brooke gave a sharp laugh. "It's a tattoo. She probably got it overseas somewhere." Ethan turned his head. "Brooke, stop talking." She stared at him. I did too. He looked back at me. Location. I knew exactly what he meant. I hadn't said those words out loud in years. "Northern Mountain Corridor," I said. "Fall of 2022. His face drained. No. I didn't answer. His eyes moved from the insignia to the burn scar, then back again. "What unit were you attached to?" "I can't discuss the unit." That answer seemed to confirm something rather than hide it. Ethan took another step back. "What was your call sign?" my mother whispered. Call sign. Brooke looked from him to me like we had both suddenly started speaking another language. I should have refused. Part of me wanted to. But I was tired of carrying 6 years of silence while my family filled the empty space with whatever story made the most sense to them. So I said it. "North Star." Ethan went completely still. One of the older men at the veterans' table stood up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. Ethan stared at me.
"North Star?"
I nodded once. He covered his mouth with one hand. "Holy hell!" Brooke's expression changed, not understanding yet, but afraid to ask. Ethan turned toward her slowly. "The woman you just told to cover her arm was attached to a Joint Special Operations Aviation Task Force." The room went silent now. Completely. My father's face went blank. Mom took one step toward me. Ethan continued, his voice rough. "There was an extraction in 2022. Aircraft took fire in the mountains. Fuel line went. Cabins started burning." He looked at my scar again. 3 operators were trapped inside. I could already smell it. Fuel, hot metal, burned fabric. I hated that memory. I hated even more that part of me still remembered every sound. Ethan looked around the room. "The flight surgeon stayed in the aircraft." Brooke whispered, "What are you talking about?" "She pulled them out." His voice cracked. "One at a time. Nobody moved. The surgeon got burned doing it. Badly." He pointed, not at me, but toward the mark on my arm. That insignia was associated with the people who made it out of that operation. An older man near the veterans' table spoke quietly. "I've seen that mark." Ethan nodded. Then he looked at me again. "My platoon received those 3 men after the evacuation. I swallowed," he continued. "One of them was Chris Donnelly. That name landed somewhere deep." I remembered Chris. 26, broken ribs, smoke inhalation, kept asking if his wedding ring had survived. Ethan laughed once, but there was no humor in it. Chris saved my life 4 months later. For the first time all night, Brooke had nothing to say. Ethan faced her. "The person you were embarrassed to stand next to is one of the reasons men from my community came home." I didn't feel victorious. That's the strange part. I thought maybe I would. Instead, I just felt tired. Then Ethan straightened, not dramatically, not for show, the way veterans do when something suddenly becomes serious. "Dr. Mercer," he said, "I owe you an apology." He paused. "So does everyone who decided your scar needed an explanation before it deserved respect." Nobody in that ballroom said a word. And for the first time in my life, Brooke wasn't looking at my arm like it was something ugly. She was looking at it like it had become evidence against everything she'd believed about me. The ballroom didn't recover right away. People tried. That's what people do when something uncomfortable happens in public. They picked up their drinks. Somebody restarted the music. The photographer pretended to check his camera settings, but the energy in the room had changed and everybody knew it. Brooke disappeared first. She walked through the side hallway toward Dad's office without looking at anyone. Mom followed a few seconds later. Dad stood there for a moment like he'd forgotten what he was supposed to do with his hands, then looked at me. "Hannah, I didn't want that conversation in front of 200 people. Not here. We ended up in the small office behind the front desk, the same room where my grandfather used to keep payroll records in a metal filing cabinet. Brooke stood near the window with her arms wrapped around herself. Mom was crying quietly. Dad looked 20 years older than he had an hour earlier. Ethan came in last and closed the door. Nobody spoke. Finally, Dad said, "Why didn't you tell us?" I stared at him. Of all the questions he could have asked, somehow that was the one. "You knew there were things I couldn't talk about." "I know, but this—" "Hannah, you were hurt. You almost died." His voice cracked on the last word. I felt sorry for him, and angry at him. "Both things can be true. Dad, I trusted you," I said. "You just never asked a question I was allowed to answer." He looked confused, so I kept going. "You couldn't ask where I was. Fine. You couldn't ask what unit. Fine. But you could have asked if I was scared. You could have asked why I stopped sleeping through the night. You could have asked why I came home one Christmas wearing long sleeves in July." Mom covered her mouth. I hadn't planned to say any of that. Once it started, though, 6 years came out all at once. Instead, every conversation was about Brooke's renovations, the lodge, who got married, whose kid got into college. And whenever Brooke and I had a problem, you told me to let it go because I was the strong one. Mom wiped her face. "I thought you were strong." I was. I paused. That didn't mean I didn't need anybody. The room went quiet again. Brooke suddenly laughed through her tears. "Great. So now I'm the villain in front of the whole town." There it was. Even after everything, she was still thinking about the audience. I turned toward her. "That's the problem, Brooke. You still think this is about how you looked." Her face hardened. "You left. I stayed. I know." That stopped her. She probably expected me to fight back. Instead, I said, "You stayed when Dad's back went bad. You handled the bank when they almost called the loan. You turned this place into something people actually want to come to. I know what you've done." Her expression shifted. "But none of that gives you the right to humiliate me." Brooke looked down. I was angry. So was I. "You don't understand what it felt like watching Mom and Dad talk about you, like you were doing something important, while I was here fixing plumbing at midnight and begging wedding planners not to cancel. I probably don't understand all of it." I stepped closer. "But you didn't understand my life either. The difference is, I didn't use that ignorance as permission to make you smaller." That one landed. Ethan finally spoke. "Hannah, I owe you more than an apology for the tattoo." I looked at him. "I judged you before I knew anything about you. I thought you were being difficult because Brooke was upset. That's on me." He didn't mention being a SEAL, didn't mention rank, didn't use the reveal as an excuse. I respected that. "I shouldn't have needed to know what you did overseas before treating you with basic respect," he said. "You're right." he nodded once. No argument, no self-defense. A knock came at the office door. May opened it without waiting. She held up a phone. Hospital called back. Walter's stable. Doctors say getting him treated quickly mattered. Nobody spoke for a second. Then Dad sat down hard in his chair. Mom started crying again. This time Brooke did too. Not the angry kind. The kind people do when whatever story they've been telling themselves finally stops working. I looked through the office window at the ballroom. People were talking again. The band had started playing. Life had moved on without waiting for us to fix our family. Maybe that was good, because some things aren't fixed in one conversation. An apology doesn't erase 6 years. A dramatic reveal doesn't magically turn hurt into healing. For the first time, nobody was asking me to cover anything up. Not the scar, not the past, not the truth. 3 weeks later, I signed the paperwork in Denver. The new program was called Rocky Mountain Air Rescue Medicine, and for the first time in years, I was building something that didn't have to stay classified. We would train flight crews, rural ER doctors, volunteer rescue teams, and mountain medics to handle the kind of emergencies that happen where ambulances can't get to you fast enough. It wasn't glamorous. That was part of why I wanted it. A few days after I accepted the position, Dad called and offered to donate money from the lodge. I want the Mercer name on something good for once, he said. I smiled, but I told him no. Not because I was angry, because I needed this next chapter to belong to the mission, not the family. He was quiet for a second, then said, "Fair enough." That meant more to me than if he'd argued. Brooke and I didn't magically become best friends. Real life doesn't work like that, she apologized. A real apology this time. No, but you have to understand attached to it. No excuses about stress or the gala. I accepted it. That wasn't the same thing as pretending nothing happened. We started small. A few texts, a phone call about Mom's birthday, one awkward coffee in Colorado Springs where neither of us knew what to say for the first 10 minutes. Then, one morning, she sent me a photograph. It wasn't the polished family portrait she had spent half the night trying to perfect. It was a shot one of the local reporters had taken when Walter collapsed. I was on my knees beside him, dress wrinkled, hair falling loose, one hand checking his pulse. My scar was completely visible. So was the insignia. Under the photo, Brooke had written one sentence. I think this is the picture we should have been proud of. I stared at it for a long time. Then I saved it. A month later, I was on my first training flight with the new rescue team, heading toward a call near the Continental Divide. A young flight medic sitting across from me noticed my arm as I pulled on my gloves. "You want to cover that?" he asked. I looked down. For half a second, I heard Brooke's voice from the gala. Then the medic pointed toward the sunlight pouring through the window. "UV exposure. Scars burn fast up here." I laughed. "Yeah, sunscreen, absolutely." I pulled a protective sleeve halfway over my forearm, then stopped before it covered the insignia completely. He raised an eyebrow. "Something wrong?" "No." I looked out at the mountains below us. "Protect it? Sure." Then I smiled. "Hide it. Never again." For years, I thought strength meant carrying everything quietly so nobody else had to feel uncomfortable. I know better now. Sometimes strength is staying calm in a crisis. Sometimes it's pulling someone out of danger, and sometimes it's simply refusing to shrink yourself so other people can keep believing a smaller version of you. My scar was never the ugliest thing in that room. The judgment was. And once I understood that, I finally stopped asking permission to be proud of the life that had left its mark on me. Sometimes the hardest lesson in life is realizing that being strong does not mean staying silent while other people diminish you. Hannah's story reminds us that dignity is not something others give us after they finally understand our sacrifices. It is something we must learn to protect even when no one else sees the full picture. Families, workplaces, and communities can fall into unhealthy patterns where the calmest person is always expected to keep the peace, swallow the hurt, and make themselves smaller so everyone else can stay comfortable. But peace built on one person's silence is not really peace. As an old American saying goes, you never know what someone is carrying. A scar, a quiet personality, an unexplained absence, or a life choice we do not understand may hold a story of courage we have never bothered to ask about. At the same time, this story is not only about proving doubters wrong. Hannah's greatest victory came when she stopped needing her family's approval to know what her life was worth. She could accept an apology without erasing the past, set boundaries without hatred, and move forward without turning pain into bitterness. That is a kind of strength many of us only learn with age. We cannot control how quickly others grow, but we can decide what treatment we will accept and what truth we will no longer hide. If this story made you think about someone you may have judged too quickly, or a time when you had to stand up for your own dignity, share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, please give the video a like and subscribe for more dramatic, meaningful stories about resilience, justice, and second chances. Wherever life finds you today, I hope you carry a little more peace, a little more courage, and the reminder that your past does not have to be hidden for your future to be bright.